Hello and welcome to my channel, and I'm happy to have you guys here today. Well, as the title says, I'd like to point out the difference between what is Marxism and what is Marx's written work. Why is it important to differentiate between those two things? Because it is easy to attribute all historical processes that happened in the name of communism and Marxism to the persona of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Of course, there are no innocent political and philosophical theories. No one writes a book without certain intentions. When Marx tried to understand the capitalist system on his main book, The Capital, he intended to demonstrate the internal contradictions of the system and how it was inherently flawed. But it doesn't mean that everything that happened subsequently to Marx's death are directly related to what he meant and wrote. The point that I'm trying to demonstrate is that Marxism is beyond Marx. The Capital, the Communist Manifesto, and other texts are not holy books. They are the origin of a political and philosophical movement that inspired thousands of others through the second half of the 19th century until today. Saying, for example, that Marx idealized an utopian society that is not tangible in the real world is pretty silly. Marx avoided talking about an idealized future on his writings. He attained mainly to the ontological investigation of reality, instead of appealing to magic futures. If others Marxist thinkers did idealize such paradise, it is on them, not on Marx. And the same goes for improvements that arose in the 20th century to the Marxist theory. Communism is not a dogma. Communism is not a religion or a way of life. Being a communist means understanding history and the nowadays state of affairs in a certain way that does not rely on myths or liberal utopias, which is anti-dialectical and therefore anti-Marxist. So, Marx is different from Marxism because the latter are plastic developments of Marx's writings. Those developments can be misinterpretations, they can be cults, they can be combinations with other authors, falsifications, but most importantly, they can be enrichments. Because the development of the human being is non-stop, and the need to overcome certain contradictions that shouldn't exist anymore is a very necessary thing. And that's why Marxism has to adapt and has to change, independently from its original author. Marxism is a science in constant development of itself. That's why the question of what would Marx or Engels think about China or the USSR or even Cuba, what would they personally think? I would say I don't know, but the answer is irrelevant because what those thinkers gave us is the method, and by the method and by our own intellectual properties we can understand reality, and we don't need their opinion, we need their method and their contributions to the understanding of the world, and most importantly their contributions to the understanding that the world can be changed.